You might fall in love with chemistry, but you also might fall in love with astrophysics or with biology or with neuroscience, right? It doesn't even matter, right? It's really finding a love for something that's complex, that's nuanced, not giving into the most obvious or easy answer, but digging deeper.
Hey guys, Eric Olson here, and welcome to episode 22 of the Science-Centric podcast. My guest in this episode is chemist, journalist, author, TV host, and YouTube star Mai Thi Nguyen-Kim. Now, if you live in the English-speaking part of the world, there's a good possibility you haven't heard of Mai, but there's a really good reason for that. Despite having a YouTube audience of over 1 million subscribers, almost all of her work has been in German, her native language. However, the good news is her first book, Chemistry for Breakfast: The Amazing Science of Everyday Life, has been translated into English, and it's set for release on April 13th, 2021. Chemistry for Breakfast follows a typical day in Mai's life and drills down into the molecules that make it all happen. An interesting and entertaining read for anyone who likes to geek out on the science of everyday existence. I spoke to Mai about her journey from chemistry PhD to TV host and author, how she balances a passion for the truth with the demands of creating a lot of content, and how science informs her philosophy of life, and her chemistry secret for making amazing chocolate desserts. So stay tuned to the end of the episode for that. But before we dive in, a few quick reminders. 1, subscribe to the channel and like this video if you'd like to see more episodes like this one. Number 2, find out how you can support our work by going to sciencecentric.com/support or checking out the links in the description. And now, without further ado, let's get on with the show. So Mai, welcome to the Science-Centric podcast. So glad to have you on as a guest. All the way from
thank you for having me.
Yeah, all the way from Germany. Where in Germany are you based?
Frankfurt.
Frankfurt. Okay, cool.
The big airport.
That's one of the
Where
few
there's not so much happening right now. There's a big testing. There's some big testing COVID center there now.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, that's one of the few German cities I've been to. Actually, I've been to Munich and I've been to Frankfurt, and that's about it. So.
Did you only fly through, or did you actually visit Germany?
I was actually in Frankfurt for I think a day or two. So I was there during the holidays, and so I got to have some. By the way, I don't speak any German, so this is so I'll probably, if I try to say something in German, I'm going to totally mispronounce it. But Apfelwein.
Yeah,
Apfelwein? Is that the...
Oh, yeah. Apfelwein. Yeah, that's some very Frankfurt thing to drink. Yeah, great. Yeah, you did the most important thing. Yes,
and Munich. I've been to Munich, and Munich was drinking beer.
And you had some beer.
Drinking a lot of beer.
Right. That sounds good.
So yeah, maybe that's a good place to start a conversation. We could talk about alcohol because in your book, in your book, which is called Chemistry for Breakfast, which I loved. You talk about alcohol. You talk about how you're because you're from Southeast Asia, you have this genetic mutation that won't let you drink alcohol. And
right.
maybe we'll come back to that. But what I wanted to find out a little bit first was that because the content that you create is in German, I think people in the English-speaking world are not particularly familiar with you. So could you just tell us a little bit about you and how you got started and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd be really surprised if anyone knew me. So I am a chemist. Before I went into science communication and science journalism, which is what I do full time now, I used to work, I was a polymer chemist. I used to synthesize polymers for biomedical applications like drug delivery. For example, now there's the mRNA vaccine. And part of that vaccine is also how do you package that mRNA, because you can't just inject naked mRNA. So that was what I was doing my research on, this sort of biomedical packaging. And then, during my PhD, I started basically just talking about my research first to friends at parties. I often felt like people were pitying me a little bit for being a chemist, you know?
Ah, interesting.
It's like, oh, that sounds hard. And let's say I'm at a party and I meet someone new and they ask me what I was doing. I say I'm a chemist, and then they would used to say things like, "Oh, I hated that in school," and "Oh, I'm so sorry," you know, "I'm so sorry." And I felt the same way about non-chemists. You know, I felt sorry for them that there's this whole world, this invisible world of molecules that they're missing out on. And so I started just talking to friends about it. And then I started participating in something called Science Slams. I think it's also a German thing. It's like poetry slams, but with scientists who talk about their research. It's not like poetry. Usually you do have like PowerPoint slides, and it's everyone tries to be very funny and entertaining, and at the end, the audience chooses a winner by applauding, and you can win a bottle of beer or something like that.
So how long do you get up and speak for, or
it's a limit of 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
You have 10 minutes. Yeah, and I don't know. It started maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and it's become quite big, and there's like national championships even in Germany. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And then now I am also I'm almost a full-time YouTuber now. I do science videos, so it's really crazy to me. During last year, during the Corona pandemic, we hit 1 million subscribers, which is crazy because I feel like there's just relatively few people who speak German, you know. So I feel it's a weird feeling, and it's something that I would have never expected with the science channel. But I got into videos because of a contest. Do you know Dance Your PhD?
Yes, I've seen those videos. Yeah, those are hilarious.
I think it's become a pretty big thing, but there was something like Dance Your PhD, like a little brother of Dance Your PhD,
and just
in Germany too.
Just for the audience, if you don't know what that is, it's where people try to dance their PhD thesis and in some kind of interpretive dance, right? And then they video it, and then they send it in, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the contest in German was called Forscher tanzen, which translates to researchers dancing, which is basically what it was. And at the time I was at the RWTH in Aachen. I just mentioned that because that might be a school that people might know abroad. I think they would like to think of themselves as the MIT of Germany.
Oh, okay.
But then while I was there for my PhD, I used to teach hip hop dance.
Oh, wow.
For like a college class. So I decided to participate in Forscher tanzen, this small Dance Your PhD like thing. So I made a video about drug delivery.
Was it just you in the video, or you had other people being the molecule, various molecules and things like that?
You can look it up. So when you type in dancing drug delivery, on YouTube, you will be able to find it. So this was the very first video I did, and I had no idea how to edit them. I basically looked for the YouTube videos on how to edit videos.
Oh, yeah.
And
there's a lot of those.
it was so much fun that I thought I would really love to do this as a hobby. But you wouldn't do videos as a hobby just for yourself, like you would take photos, right? I immediately thought of starting a YouTube channel, but it took me more than a year to actually do it because I was kind of afraid of what people might think, because it's not something that a chemist, especially in Germany, because I don't know, I feel like in terms of media and stuff, and also YouTube, the US, they're a lot more open-minded than in Germany. Everything is a lot more conservative.
Okay.
So I couldn't picture myself like uploading a YouTube video and then the next day going into the lab.
That's interesting. It's an interesting point. I wonder about that, because there are people in the US too that like. They are working.
Put yourself out there, right? It's somehow.
You're working scientist, and then you're putting yourself out into this format where, you might get something wrong, and then it's not,
Yeah.
You can.
And a lot of people still think, it depending on who you talk to, especially like older generations of scientists, is kind of frowned upon, to do science communication.
Yeah.
But I. Basically, when I was, I spent some time in the US during my studies, and then I went back for the last year of my PhD. And when I did that for the last year, and when I was in Boston, far away from home, I actually started my YouTube channel there.
Yeah. But in German, right? It was also in German.
Yeah, I started it it was mixed at the beginning. So my first YouTube channel is called The Secret Life of Scientists. It's still up there. It's not active anymore, but it's called this way because I did like a small series of video portraits of my friends, basically. I wanted to portray different scientists and also engineers, but not focusing on their work, but on everything else, on them as human beings, because I felt like scientists seem so otherworldly, or like people who don't have hobbies or friends.
Right. Right. Well, that's not entirely untrue, right? I mean, especially postdocs, right?
Yeah, I know, but I felt like if we really want to inspire young people to pick up science, you shouldn't only talk about science. Of course, I love science. Science is incredible. Science is cool, but it's also important that people are able to identify with scientists,
Yeah,
and
right.
and that was my initial goal with my small private channel. And then I got, now I'm making YouTube videos for, what's it called? Like it's like the BBC, but for Germany, the public broadcasting.
Yeah, I saw that. It's a show called Quarks.
That's on, right. So I'm hosting a TV show. It's called Quarks, right? And my YouTube channel is called My Lab. So it's like my first name, Mai, and then Lab.
So did the TV show come from doing the YouTube channel?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
That was a big surprise, because Quarks in Germany, I used to watch it as a child.
Okay, yeah.
And so the host.
Here the equivalent would be Nova, I believe. Nova, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay.
I think so. It's like the science TV show, and the host, his name is Ranga Yogeshwar. He was about to quit because he's been doing that for 25 years, and he was basically planning to retire and he was looking for someone new. I didn't know that, but I was just one day there was a phone call and they invited me to a casting, and that was unreal.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I mean, it's cool to see that progression from, just doing something on almost on a whim to now I have a successful YouTube channel to now I'm on television hosting this show that I watched when I was a kid. I mean, that's such a great story.
I didn't even plan to go back. So when I finished my PhD, I was planning to do some type of sabbatical where I thought, so there's this new, so in Germany, there's this public broadcasting service, like the German BBC, it's called ARD and ZDF. They only used to do TV. And now they realized, because the viewers, people who watch TV in Germany, the average age is like 65. The average age. So when you're 50, you're already considered a young person. So fortunately, I'm glad to see that they chose to, also develop formats that they host online, which is a big thing in Germany. I don't know if people are aware, because Germany and internet and new media, it's like we're a third world country, really.
Really? Wow. That's so surprising.
It's really bad.
I know that so in your book you talked about like the Wi-Fi service being really bad, and
right. It's it's in there for a reason. It's that's German life, that your internet, you don't even have fast internet everywhere. And
I think that's true of Europe in general, because I remember going to London, it was a similar thing, and I think it's because it's the old telephone network or something, it's this old infrastructure, and they're trying to put this bolt this modern thing onto this old structure, and it's just everything's so slow and painful. So
so when ARD and ZDF, so when the public broadcasting announced that they would start online shows, and they asked me if I wanted to develop something with science, talking about science, and I thought, well, that's crazy. Yeah, I will try this for a year, and then I'll go back to the lab and to doing research. But then I ended up never going back.
That's awesome. So and then this so the TV show, that now the book, which is coming out, I think is it out already in Germany, or it's coming out?
Yeah,
in Germany,
it's crazy. So the book, the chemistry for breakfast book, which is called Komisch alles chemisch in German. I imagine it sounds really funny. So this was my first book, and just recently on March 1st, my second book came out here in Germany.
Oh, wow.
So it's really crazy to me, because it's so cool that I get to watch like both books coming out, because I never thought that my book would ever be translated into English.
Yeah.
This is like a really big deal. I think in general for German authors, anything that's translated into English, that's like the dream. So I'm super excited. Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed reading it. And so the book, it covers a lot of stuff. And one thing that I was thinking when I was reading it, I was thinking that chemistry in particular is kind of the what am I trying to say? It's kind of the middle science between everything else, right? Because below it you have, physics, and above it you have biology, and then maybe above biology you have psychology or something like that. But chemistry is really this like sort of middle science, and it is very easy in a way for people to grasp, where maybe physics or biology isn't, because physics is so weird in a lot of ways, and it's very mathematical. And then you have biology, which is like can be very, very complicated with so many molecular pathways and stuff. But chemistry feels like it kind of sits in the middle there, and it's maybe more accessible. Do you think that's true? To
me, I think chemistry is very accessible.
Yeah.
So it almost frustrates me when people say, oh, that used to be so complicated in school. I hated it. I never understood it. And to me, I think chemistry is very accessible, and it's a very close to everyday life. This is what the book is all about, right? Yeah. It's everywhere. I mean, we are made out of molecules, right? So the two of us, I'm just a bunch of molecules talking to you, which is a bunch of molecules about molecules. It's so meta.
That just like freaks me out when I think about it.
No, it's such an everyday science to me, and I don't see it represented as much in the media. So in Germany, a lot of the science communicators are physicists. Somehow. Yeah. I don't know why. And I think it's the same when I think about Bill Nye. Is Bill Nye a physicist?
He actually studied engineering. He's the one that when you said that immediately came to mind was Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson,
he's an
right.
astrophysicist, which is something a little.
And we have a few people also in German media that are very present, and there are no chemists, and I wonder why. So I'm happy I can represent now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, and you talk about in the book, it tying into, cosmetics and food, especially. I mean.
Oh yeah, food.
So I actually studied biochemistry. That was my background, but I went more into the direction of kind of molecular biology and genetics, which is a little bit, and not just straight chemistry. But I cook also, and I totally get that like cooking and chemistry are so intimately related, especially when you get into German, baking. Baking.
Oh yeah, baking. Yeah. Baking is straight up chemistry, and baking is hard. You have to follow a few rules. So in baking you can really just screw it all up, right? You can if you want to make cookies, and they might just melt into one giant cookie. I think cooking, there's not so much that can go wrong, not as much as in baking.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Interestingly, in German, so when chemists go into the lab and work in the lab, so lab work is called kochen, which is the same word as cooking. So we say, ich muss doch was kochen im Labor. It means I just have to finish this thing up in the lab. It's called kochen, so cooking, and it really is basically the same thing. And I just love cooking so much because it's basically like chemistry, but you can eat it. I mean, how awesome is that?
Yeah, if your experiment was successful because it tastes good, right? At the end of the day. Yeah, I had a funny story about that I when I was going to school, I was also bartending at the same time. Sometimes late into the evening, and then I would have an early morning organic chemistry lab. So I'd sometimes come in my restaurant outfit, and I was in that mode of like pouring one thing into the other, and just kind of you don't measure anything, you just kind of look. And so I would come into the OChem lab, and I'd be doing the same thing because I was just in that mindset. And it was the funniest thing because the professor, the teaching assistant was like, wow, have you done this lab before? You seem very confident, and like, all your experiments are turning out so well. And I was like, no, I don't know. It was so strange that that even worked. Yeah. I don't know how that worked.
Yeah, it's very closely related.
None of my experiments should have worked. Somehow they all worked. So one of the things that came through in the book, and we sort of addressed that, just talking about that, but that, just science is kind of a different way of looking at things. And as I was reading your book, I definitely I could relate to that in how you see things, like you start to see things differently. Do you think your book is sort of like, in a way, like your philosophy of life. It's not so much, not just about these interesting facts about chemistry, but is it sort of a little deeper than that in terms of like your philosophy?
In a way, yes. I mean, what I talk about in the book towards the end is something that I call scientific spirit, even in German. The word spirit, we don't have a word for that in German. So when you read the original German book, you will read wissenschaftlicher Spirit, so scientific spirit. And
yeah,
I understand. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I always find that so interesting that science is called, is it Wissenschaft in German?
Wissenschaft.
Right. It means, what does that translate to? It's like wise. It's like it's related to like wisdom,
Wissen
right?
Means it's related to wisdom, but Wissen means knowledge, and Wissenschaft means well, it's hard, but it's like the kind of the way to get to knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, all right. Sorry, I totally interrupted you. I apologize for that.
Yeah.
I thought maybe the audience was like, what is she talking about? Wissenschaft.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, Wissenschaft.
So we were talking about your like philosophy, if this sort of ties into your philosophy.
So I feel like so to me, the book is basically a love letter to chemistry from me in one way, but it's not only about chemistry, because when you fall in love with science, you might fall in love with chemistry, but you also might fall in love with astrophysics or with biology or with neuroscience, right? It doesn't even matter, right? Sometimes people try to say, isn't this technically physics what you're talking about, or isn't this technically biology? Yeah, of course. I mean, it doesn't. It's about. So in German you would specify and say Naturwissenschaften, which means natural sciences. So anything that is evidence based.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty in that is that you can transfer this kind of thinking, this kind of evidence-based arguing to also political debates, right?
Right.
And also this not only to the ability to say this is fact, let's not argue about that, but then at the same time the openness to say, well, this. Here we do not have scientific facts, and so we should at least tolerate different opinions without, because I feel like nowadays people treat opinions as if they were scientific facts.
Right.
And then facts, on the other hand, are somehow treated like personal opinions. And I think if you just, I don't know, learn about chemistry and about the complex ways molecules interact with each other. At first glance, it doesn't have anything to do with politics or the way we debate with each other, but it's really finding a love for something that's complex, that's nuanced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not giving into the most obvious or easy answer, but digging deeper. This is something on a meta level that's beautiful about science, and that you could view as some sort of philosophy or spirit, as I called it in the book.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think it's a curiosity about things and wanting to dig kind of below the surface of it. I mean, that's what got me interested in science, is that I was always interested in how living organisms work, and I just kept digging. And I was like, I'm really good. I want to understand. I want to dig deep down into that and understand the processes that make it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think people are sort of, Well, that's an interesting question too that I struggle a lot with as a science communicator. But because science is so open-ended, and you can, no study is really definitive. I mean, not really. Right. It could be overturned at any time. So it's an interesting thing when
it's just what we know right now, right?
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing that when you are sort of, interacting with the public and saying, well, I'm an expert and I know this and I'm communicating something as though it's a fact. But that fact could be, all you can really say is this is the best that we know right now, right? This is the best information that we have right now. But then that gets kind of old when you're communicating things. Like you don't want to have to say that after everything that you say. So, right. So how do you balance that, those sort of, what you know about science as a process with also, communicating science to the public?
Right. So what I was trying to convey in the book. So in the book and also in the videos that I make and the TV shows, I always try not only to explain scientific facts, but also try to explain why do we think this is the case? What were the methods? What were the scientific methods that led to these conclusions?
Yeah.
So, for example, it's a difference if there was a randomized controlled clinical trial where there were two groups, a test group and a placebo group, right? Or if a study was based on a survey, a psychological survey, which is also a scientific method. But in media articles, you never or you very rarely hear about methods, right? So you might hear about conflicting results. You only hear about the results. If you don't know how were these results obtained, then you might think, there's so much conflict and so little consensus within the scientific community. But in reality, oftentimes there is a big consensus, and it just seems very conflicted in the media, and that's what it's very intense. I'm sure it's the same everywhere in the world, but I can see it here in Germany during COVID, that at the beginning people were really interested in science and really listening to virologists and epidemiologists. And now I feel like a lot of people got tired because they feel like, there's just so many conflicting opinions. I don't even know who to believe anymore. And people just end up believing whatever expert fits their own personal view. So this is it's a challenge. So how I go about it, for my videos, my YouTube videos, they've become longer and longer.
Yeah,
because
I saw that.
I'm still trying to make them as short as possible. But now I see there's some things I just need to explain. For example, a detailed explanation of the methods, right? If I don't do that, then I'm saying the vaccines are safe, and then some other dude on YouTube is saying the vaccines will make you sick. And if I can't argue, I have to argue in more detail. So in a weird way, all this also misinformation that's out there, it forces us science communicators to do a better job.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I guess I would just say that, so once you start to dig into that though, do you find that, and you know this from YouTube's probably analytics, so say I was looking at your channel, like a lot of your videos are like 20 minutes long. I mean, do you find that people actually stick around for the whole explanation, or they just want, I want to know this woman's opinion and then I'm going to go to this video that has a different opinion,
Yeah, actually, the longer let's say there's a rule of thumb. The more time we put into the research for a video, the more successful it is.
Oh, really?
Usually.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
good to hear,
it really pays off. And we were kind of surprised ourselves, because at the beginning I started making longer and more detailed videos because I was kind of tired of making like short videos that I said I felt like I wouldn't watch these videos. I want to watch videos that I can learn something from too.
Right.
So
right.
I started making longer videos, and the views would go up, and we would get more and more subscribers. And this is a trend that I can definitely confirm that I think how to get views on YouTube, you have to offer something that not many people can offer. And in my particular case, I can read through papers. I have the scientific background to dig deep and then to explain it back. So this has worked out very, very great for the channel. It actually grew. It's been growing ever since we made longer and more detailed videos.
Wow, that's great. I mean, that's really encouraging to hear, actually.
Yeah, I know. And I can only encourage other science communicators to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why, when I started this channel, or the Science-Centric channel, I was like, I don't want to just get up there and make some kind of explainer thing and just say, something that I don't, like I have a very surface level understanding of. Like I want to have people on that really understand things and have depth, and that people could spend a whole hour and like understand something on a deeper level and hear from somebody who really understands it, and not just my opinion on it, because what do I know, But
that's a very humble attitude that I think a lot of scientists have. That's what I also love about science, because you in your everyday work you learn many times that you don't know anything. And
yes,
that's a very valuable lesson.
I think that comes with age as well. That you realize the more you learn, that you realize the less you know. It's like one of those paradoxes. So bringing it back around to your book, you cover a lot of ground in this book, and I imagine, you probably had to do some like serious research for it. I imagine you don't walk around with, sort of all these facts in your head about chemistry that you could just spout off. Maybe you do. I mean, maybe you do, but did you have to do a lot of research in that sense?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because I thought I had all this knowledge about chemistry. So, in fact, the first draft of the book, I wrote it pretty fast, because I had all these ideas, and then I just wrote it down, and then I went back and sort of just did some fact checking, and then I realized on many levels, so this is not at all like I remembered, or this is a lot more complicated than I thought. So there's a friend of mine who's also a science journalist. He says, when you don't change your mind like 1 or 2 times during researching for an article or a video or whatever, you're probably not doing good research. So this was definitely the case with this book. But since I'm doing a lot of TV shows and YouTube videos about different topics, I'm lucky to be able to learn a lot, actually. Yeah. So after I made YouTube videos for a year, I felt, subjectively, I felt much smarter than after my PhD, actually.
Oh, wow.
Because after a PhD, you know a lot of stuff, but you're such a specialist,
Yeah.
You can't even talk in detail about it with many people. And now with the work I'm doing now, it's all relevant topics, and I love that. I love learning about new things, and I feel like the longer I'm on this job, the the smarter I get. So a lot of people mistake me for being just extraordinarily smart because of course, whenever I did the research for a video, I know quite a bit about this topic. But then I always try to let people know that I also didn't know before I started, right? I had to read all these papers. I had to talk to experts. So I think this is the more also a more empowering way to look at it, because then anyone can do it, right? If you just had the time and the passion to do it. Yeah. It's not an exclusive, science is not an exclusive club for geniuses, right?
Yeah, I think, and I've noticed there are definitely some people that have that attitude. Actually, I find it doesn't come from the science community. It actually comes from people who think they know what scientists do, or they think they understand the process of science. And they say, if somebody's, has done the work and is presenting what they found, and they'll say, well, you're not a scientist. It's like, yeah, but maybe you spent a lot of time researching this and you can read a paper and you understand it, and you can write or speak intelligently about it. I mean, it's accessible to anyone. I think having that science training, you're probably able to do it more quickly, right? You can quickly go through and like dissect a paper and say, oh, I get the idea behind this, but anybody could do that if they spend enough time. I think that's 100% true. Yeah. And then you have people in the audience that are saying, oh, you're not a scientist. You can't possibly understand this. I don't think that's true at all. Yeah. You got to know the basics, but so along the course of sort of researching and writing, were there any things that you learned that just completely blew your mind, that were really surprising?
There's one part where I just very briefly talk about serotonin and how it's related to mood and depression. And I had an old, very short video up that was about, I don't know if it's the same term in English, but in German it's called like winter depression. It's like a seasonal, it's a phenomenon of seasonal depression.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, right.
And I know because I actually have it, so
oh
I have
wow,
that problem.
So there was a video about that, and then I just very briefly in one sentence talked about serotonin and that it's also used as antidepressants. And during the research for the book, I read deeper into it, and I noticed that the research on antidepressants and how and if they actually work is really contradictory and inconsistent. And I know that there's a lot of people that where antidepressants really help them, but the research is a lot more inconclusive than I thought. And I ended up taking the video down just because I didn't want like false information out there. Yeah. And it's not even a big part of the book, but it's also it's a part where I talk about that how science is a lot of times inconclusive, and that we also have to live with some level of uncertainty. We are, as people, pretty bad at handling uncertainties. We don't like uncertainties, right? Yeah. People even prefer conspiracy theories that are awful, but still prefer them over being uncertain, And we kind of have to, and that's also something like this meta lesson that you get from science, that some things are just uncertain, and you kind of have to live with that and live with these open questions and just keep looking for answers.
Yeah. I feel that way every time I try to do something about like natural history or like paleontology, because there's so much missing information. So they just sort of go, well, this is our best guess based on the fossils that we have. And you're like, okay, well, as a lab scientist, that's very, kind of unsatisfying.
Yeah, I know.
You know? Can't you just put those dinosaurs in a lab? Come on. Yeah, so that's interesting. So that's yeah, I mean, that kind of alludes to what we were talking about before, which is that, you know, you want to present something as, I mean, you have to make something, right? If you're a content creator, but then there's a certain level of uncertainty with the science, and then you kind of have to like balance those things out. But I guess in this situation, you're saying that it was just, there wasn't something that you could really say that was very conclusive, and so you just decided that it was better to just not put it out there at all.
I actually made an updated video about antidepressants, which is again 20 minutes long. And then that was okay. But that old video, you know, I didn't, it was about this seasonal, what's it called again?
Seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah.
I guess affect is like your mood. So that's where that affective comes from. Like,
yeah. So the video about that, I made this short comment about antidepressants there that I didn't research in depth. And it was something along the lines of, you know, there are meds with serotonin that are helpful with depression, or are helpful antidepressants. And it was just one sentence. And I just know that it's not as easy as that, right? That some people are for some people it helps, but the science is inconclusive, and some people are also having had bad experience with that. So I felt like I couldn't just, even if it's just one sentence, I felt like I can't let this online. This is just, in this short sentence as it is, it's false.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I felt like I felt the need to update that. So I ended up making a longer video, and this is what I stumbled upon while writing the book, while researching for the book. Oh,
okay, interesting. So this was a video that had been up, and then you're writing the book, and you're like, this video is wrong.
Yeah, this video is wrong, and I took it down, and then I don't know. It took a while, but like half a year or a year after the book came out, or after I've written the book, I got around to make a second big video on antidepressants that I'm now pretty happy with, because it really, because I try to explain this uncertainty, and not only, you know, explain that it's not, of course, it's people don't want to hear, I don't know, the science is inconclusive. But if that's the case, at least you want to try to explain why is it inconclusive. And I think it sometimes helps to explain people how, for example, depression is, what kind of methods you would use in this research, and why they aren't, why it's not that easy to get conclusive evidence. It's not necessarily because people are doing a sloppy job. It's just because it's so hard to do research on depression.
I think probably anything involving the brain is probably difficult.
Yeah.
So speaking of seasonal affective disorder, I found that the best thing that's helped me this season is coffee. Which has, you know, probably everybody's favorite molecule, which is caffeine, right? Mm-hmm. That was a chapter in your book. You're talking about caffeine, and there's like a correlate with chocolate, right?
Oh yeah, towards the end. So there's a recipe for a chocolate lava cake in the book. Yeah. Good selling point. And so there's caffeine and theobromine. I think that's how you pronounce it in English. That they look pretty similar, the chemical structures. And theobromine also has a very soft, how do you call it, like awakening effect.
Oh yeah.
but not as much as caffeine. But also in that recipe section, it's a nice little trick to add just a little bit of coffee to any sort of chocolate desserts that you make, because the aromas in chocolate and coffee are pretty similar. If you have like baking cocoa at home and you just go in with your finger and just lick it dry, pure, it kind of will remind you of coffee.
Oh yeah,
but just
sure.
Not as intense. So you could look at coffee as some sort of chocolate-like intense flavor boost, but with a twist. And don't worry, it won't taste like coffee, because I don't like coffee chocolatey desserts.
Yeah.
You won't actually taste the coffee, but it's just like a boost of the chocolate flavor. Similar to how you sometimes can put like a pinch of salt to sweet things to enhance like the sweetness.
Yeah.
It's something like that, but with the chocolatiness.
It just intensifies the flavor.
The aroma, yeah.
The aroma.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do a cookbook at some point?
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah. it's in the back of my mind. It's been there for a while, but I don't know. Maybe in a few years when I feel I have time for that. Yeah, I would love that.
That's
it's
awesome.
actually my dream to like run a small cafe or restaurant, and I would just have it open for a week and then close for a week. Like open, close, and during the closed week, I would be in the lab and just work on like very cool recipes, and then also just like offer maybe 3 or 4 items on the menu that I thought of during that week. Yeah, that's a concept that's like a dream of mine. Someday I might just do that.
You can just call it the chemistry lab or something like that. Cool. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but thanks. This has been really great. And I know we spent a lot of time about like talking more about kind of science and science communication, but your book is really fun to read. It's like, it's these kind of everyday, kind of walking through your everyday and then digging down into the chemistry and all these, science connections that you might not see. So people should definitely check it out. And then, because this is an English speaking audience, like, they might have, unless they speak German, they might have trouble following your YouTube channel, but like where else could they find you online that they could interact with you in some way?
Well, I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Mai Thi, my first name, MAITHI, and then what's the dash called that's at the bottom?
I will flash it up on the screen, but I forget the name of that. I think it's just called a spacer or something like that. I don't remember the name.
Yeah, and then NK, and
okay.
Yeah, and if you're interested in learning German, you can try to pull up the videos, and at least they have German subtitles. They might help.
Yeah. Or maybe those can get translated at some point. We can talk about that after. Anyways, thanks again, Mai. This has been great, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Well, that's it for this episode. We kind of delved a little bit more into the science communication side of things rather than science itself, but I hope you enjoyed anyways. As always, if you learned something new, be sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons. Also, click that little bell icon to get notifications when new episodes go live. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this episode, so please leave a comment or question below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.